So, good day to all. Today, I am going to talk about the viewpoints or the perspective on culture. So, first, let's talk about the cultural relativism. So, what is cultural relativism? So, it is the idea that beliefs, values, and practices should be understood and interpreted within the context of a particular culture. It suggests that there's no universal standard to judge all cultures as each has its own unique perspective. So, cultural relativism posits that cultural norms and practices should be assessed within the framework of their own cultural context without imposing external judgment, right? So, for example, uh, in some societies, so they practice like kanang arranged marriage. So, sa ilaha is considered na siya na normal kay na masilahang culture and acceptable na sa para sa ilaha. But for us nga na wala na akwan sa ilahang culture is kanang dili siya acceptable kay para sa tuan mawala ang rights sa mga katong babae or sa lalaki, di ba? So, but sa ilaha ang arranged marriage is kanang okay lang. So, muna siya ang ginakuan sa cultural relativism na kanang there's no universal standard to judge all culture as it has its own unique perspective. Right? So, cultural relativism doesn't imply that all cultural practices are equally valid, but it encourages understanding and analysis within each cultural context rather than applying a universal standard. Next, let's move on to number 2, which is culture shock. So, it is the disorientation and discomfort one may feel when encountering an unfamiliar culture. So, it is often occurs when individuals move to a different country or region with distinct customs, behavior, and social norms. So, this adjustment process can involve stages of euphoria, frustration, adjustment, and acceptance as individuals navigate and adapt to their new cultural environment. So, culture shock is the disorienting feeling that individuals experience when exposed to a new unfamiliar culture. So, this manifests in various ways like confusion, anxiety, to frustration. So, for example na lang ani is, imagine someone na kanang gikan sa tua sa Pilipinas and then ning adto siya sa European country. 'Di ba? So in European country is dili kay sila naga kuan og English, so ang ilang language is lahi. So ang katong kita for example na mga dito is ma-feel na to ang anxiety because wata kabalo kung gilibak na bata nila ana. So muna siya na ma-feel ta or ma-overwhelm ta sa different customs, ba? So siyempre itong yun ako na language barriers, ba? And also the social expectation leading to a sense of culture shock as they navigate this unfamiliar aspect of daily life. So that is what culture shock is. So number 3 is ethnocentrism. So ethnocentrism is the tendency to judge other cultures based on the standards and values of one's own culture. So this often is leading to a biased perspective. So this can lead to a misunderstanding and a lack of appreciation of cultural diversity. So example of ethnocentrism could be from some culture, dismissing the tradition of another culture as strange or inferior because they differ from their own familiar practices without understanding the cultural context. So, ang example anis para sa kuha is kanang natoy isa ka tribe sa Africa nga ang ilahang tribe dito is ang mga lalaki sulod sa 6 months kanang mga single nga lalaki is ang ilahang buhaton ana is wala gyud sila buhaton. Magkaon ang ilaha lang jud is padakon lang jud nila ilahang tiyan. Okay? Kay para sila kung mas dako ang tiyan o mas round ang tiyan sa isa ka lalaki is mas attractive. So, ang buhaton sa lalaki is mag-inom lang jud sila gatas sa cow milk, blood. So, mo lang gina ang ilahang buhaton sulod sa unom ka bulan. Di ba? So, para sa tuwa is dili siya strange siya sa tuwa, di ba? Kay siyempre parakon gyud nimong tiyan niya. Kuan ka kanang maskilado na kadaan tapos para lang makakita kag pangasawa nimo is kailangan ka mo kuan pud dako imong tiyan. Sundon nimong ilahang cultures. So, muna siya ang kuan sa ethnocentrism. Next is the xenocentrism. So, it is the preference for or appreciation of elements from other culture over one's own. So, it is a cultural phenomenon where individuals or society shows a preference for the products, practices, or ideas of a foreign culture over their own. This can manifest in various ways such as valuing foreign languages, fashion, technology, or art more highly than those of their own culture. Example ani is kanang includes individual adapting a foreign language or accent because they perceive it as a more sophisticated. So like sa mga Pinoy, di ba? Hilig kayo kuan sa mga languages sa lain, di ba? So ang gamit sa language is kasagawan na is na ay English, di ba? So, muna siya ang ginakuan sa uban ay sa xenocentrism o ethnocentrism da mas gikuan pa nato ang culture sa lain kumpara sa to ang culture. Right? So, di ba, kuan kita sa mga Korean, mag-Korean na, like, di ba, una lang, muna example sa kuan, xenocentrism. Next is the fifth one, which is the Eurocentrism. So, it refers to the tendency to interpret the world from a European or a Western perspective, often marginalize or discouraging other culture and viewpoints. It has been criticized for contributing to the cultural bias and inequality in historical and contemporary context. So, Eurocentrism is a worldview that places European culture and history at the center, often diminishing the importance of other culture. So, this perspective has influenced various aspects of academia, history, and social attitude. Example in literature and languages. So, Eurocentrism can influence language and literature studies with a bias toward European languages and literary works. Right? So, ibig sabihin is kanang mas kuan pa nila ang ilahang mga works, mga unana kay feel nila or ilaha yun na sila ang mas taas or sila ang mas higher sa tanang culture. Muna siya ang sa Eurocentrism. Um, so other example is kanang diba, manifest in cultural hegemony where European norms and values are seen as the superior or more civilized. So this can affect global cultural exchange with non-European cultures often being judged against European standards. Right. So now let's move on to number 6, which is the noble savage mentality. So the noble savage mentality is a concept suggesting that primitive or indigenous people are inherently virtuous and uncorrupted by civilization. It has been criticized for oversimplifying and romanticizing these cultures, neglecting their complexities. So, the novel savage concept dates back to the 18th century and was popularized by thinkers like Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Jean-Jacques Rousseau. It posits that indigenous or primitive societies are morally superior to more advanced or civilized society. So, the concept is that it implies that those living closer to nature are somehow more virtuous, compassionate, and harmonious than the people in the advanced civilization. So, their lack of exposure to the vices of modern society is seen as preserving their innate goodness. So, in summary, the noble savage mentality is a historical concept that idealizes indigenous culture as morally superior due to their perceived distance from the perceived corruption of civilization. So, now let's move on to number 7, which is the subculture. So, a subculture refers to a group of people within a society who share distinctive beliefs, values, and practices that sets them apart from the larger culture. So this can include elements like fashion, music, language, social behaviors. So example of the subcultures include gangs, punks, hip-hops, enthusiasts, or so pinakakuha na to na example is emo, di ba? So na sila ilahang sariling culture, di ba? Muna siya ang ginakaon sa subcultures na distinct na sila sariling beliefs, di ba? So emo is, di ba, mga so mga emotions, di ba, muna ilang mga ilang mga buhok is may pa bangs talinis. So pahit-hait na buhok muna sa mga sa emos, di ba? Mga subcultures na yun. Then next, let's move on to the counterculture versus contraculture. So counterculture typically refers to a social movement with values and norms that oppose to the mainstream culture. On the other hand, culture generally implies a direct opposition to the dominant culture's beliefs and practices. So, while the terms are sometimes used interchangeably, counterculture often suggests a subculture that exists alongside a dominant culture, whereas contraculture implies a more confrontational stance. So, it can involve resistance, rebellion, or even revolutionary action. So, ang kuan siya, kalahian lang nila is, ang counterculture is that, nalang siya sa mga, dili siya mas, anong tawag ni, peaceful lang siya nga, kuan, nga kuan nila na wala sila nga gusto na kana nga culture. So habang ang contra culture is nag-contradict gyud sila or kanang gi-confront nila gyud ang kana nga culture sa isa ka society. So example anang sa contra culture is katong the Philippine Revolution, di ba? So nag-revolt ang Pilipinas kasi wala sila kagusto sa pamamahala sa mga kuan Espanyol, di ba? Sa Pilipinas. So muna siya, di ba? Rebellion or resistance or revolutionary actions against the mainstream, di ba? So muna siya ang kalahian nila. Then and next is the culture lag. So culture lag refers to the time it takes for societies, beliefs, and values to adapt to technological and social changes. It's the delay between the introduction of new elements in culture and the acceptance of those changes by the society as a whole. So culture lag occurs when changes in society outpace the ability of the culture to adapt. This lag can be observed in various aspects including technology, values, and social norms. Example in technology. So when the internet became widely accessible, so it took some time for social norms to adapt to the new ways of people communicated and shared information. Diba? So sa dating panahon, ang mga lola, diba, is ang ilang way of messaging is through letter or katong napay magbayad-bayad, diba? Na kuan tawag ba 'to, magbayad. So mo pa na siya ang mga kuan sa cultural lag is maiwit yun na sila di pa sila ka kuan sa mga technology because ang ilahang kuan is delayed na. So di ba? So muna siya ang sa culture lag. Madelay ang pagkuan process sa mga isa ka norms sa isa ka society kay tungod is nabaguhan pa sila sa kana nga kuan culture. Next is the cultural diffusion. So cultural diffusion refers to the spread of cultural elements such as ideas, beliefs, practices, and technologies from one society to another. It can occur through various means including trade, migration, conquest, and communication. So this process often leads to blending and exchange of different cultural aspects among diverse community. So example ani is example sa cultural diffusion is kanang Americanization of Filipino immigrants to the US. So meaning kanang gipanganak, for example, gipanganak siya Pilipino but nag-migrate sila sa US. So ang iyang culture is kanang mag-diffuse, di ba? So kay na expose naman siya sa laing na culture, sa American culture. So muna siya ang example or lagi mo siya or sa communication, di ba? Na kay ka-communicate nga laing tao, na laing culture, muna siya sa kuan next is the number 11 is the cultural adaptation. So cultural adaptation refers to the process of adjusting to or integrating aspects of a different culture. So it involves learning and adapting new customs, behavior, and norms to navigate and interact successfully within a specific cultural context. Example is that learning and using languages from different culture, also kana behavior ang nasa laing lugar mo sunod, kailangan jud ka mo sunod sa ilahang culture, like moadto kag Japan, ba? Kung kabalo ka kung unsa ka importante ang respect sila or ang pagbow, ba? So or pagsuot sa ilahang mga clothes, di ba? So para ma-align silang culture. So i-adapt nimo ang cultures nila, di ba? Muna siya ang sa cultural adaptation. Now, let's move on to the next, which is the acculturation versus inculturation. So, acculturation refers to the process by which individuals or group from one culture comes into contact with or adopt elements of another culture, leading to cultural changes. So, this can involve changes in behavior, customs, language, and values. So, acculturation, cultural borrowing, and cultural imitation. So, for example, ani is kanang so maghilig ka og or ang Pilipino is kanang English be best in English speaking people in Asia, di ba? So ang English is gibaro lang nato na sila sa American culture, ilang language man na, di ba? Also hilig po ta mag kuan sa mga cultural imitation, like mag tanaw-tanaw tag mga kuan kanang habang naka-istorya kag or naka-contact kag person with another culture, di ba? So ma-imitate nimo ang iyahang culture, right? Di ba? Like iyang mga language, di ba? Iyang customs ba, di ba? Unsay iyang mga values dito ana. So muna siya sa acculturation. So cultural borrowing and cultural imitation. So muna ang sa acculturation. Next is the inculturation. So inculturation refers to the process by which individuals learn and acquire the cultural norms, values, beliefs, and behavior of their society or groups. So it occurs through socialization within the community and plays a crucial role in shaping an individual's identity and understanding of the world. So, inculturation is a complex social process that involves the transmission of cultural knowledge and practices from one generation to next. So, examples ani is kanang kuan. Sa imong family, di ba? So, ang parents nimo is kuan siya og mga values ginahatag sa mga values nga tudluan ka sa mga cultures dahil sa inyong lugar, di ba? So muna siya, so usahay ka na mga sa panahon karon is technology naman, so ma-expose na sa mga televisions so movies or fashions or cultural norms sa ato societal siya sa ato mga society. So for example is kanang kuan mga fashion trends, so sa mga suoton nga nindot, di ba? Sa mga language nga panggamito nato tungod sa mga salida natong gitan-aw. So mo na siya ang sa culturation. So malikon ako ang acculturation, it refers to the process by which individuals or group from one culture comes into contact with or adopt elements of another culture, or cultural borrowing or cultural imitation. And enculturation is a complex social process that involves the transmission of cultural knowledge and practices from one generation to the next. So, muna siya ang kalayaan nila. Diba? So, that would be all my report. So, and again, good day to all. Thank you.